Do you struggle to keep in contact with all the people that you know? Of course you do. We all do. But it turns out that AI can help us maintain our connections. My name's Morgan McClintic. Welcome to Fired Up. And today we're going to be talking about the impact of AI on our networking. And we're going to be joined by Dave Sifry. Now, if that name rings a bell, it's because he was the CEO and founder of Technorati and has been a serial entrepreneur. And he's just founded a new company that caught my eye called Warmstart. Now, Warmstart looks at your email and all your connections and helps you keep in contact with them so that the value of your network can be maintained. We're going to be talking to Dave about his business and the impact of AI on connections. You'd think that perhaps it might be chilling, but actually it can help us grow them. But how? And we'll also talk to him a little bit about what it's like founding a company now in the AI era, in terms of coding, in terms of resourcing, in terms of fundraising. Let's talk to him a little bit about what he's learned and doing differently this time since before, back in the Technorati days. So please join me in welcoming Dave Sifry, founder of Warmstart, to Fired Up. Dave, hi. Welcome to Fired Up. How are you?
Morgan, it is such a pleasure to see you, old friend. I can't believe it's been this long since we've talked.
It's been a long time. And your new startup, Warmstart, caught my eye because I think we all struggle with connections, making new connections, particularly now post-COVID. You know, we're not meeting people face to face as much as we were. And we're all being overwhelmed by all of this cold email and these connections on LinkedIn. So it's hard to make new connections. And I saw your startup that's sort of trying to address this very problem, the problem of maintaining human connection. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Warmstart.
It really comes from, again, scratching a personal itch, right? Like I realized that, I'm a founder. I run a founder-led business. I'm doing business development. I'm doing sales. I'm also doing finance and I'm doing coding in the background and bottle cap washing on the side, right? So I don't have a ton of time, but what I do have is something I'm really passionate about that I think I can really help people with. So I was actually building company number 8, which is actually an AI answers engine called Questy. And I wanted to tell people about it. Like I built this cool thing that helps solve a whole bunch of problems and saves people a lot of time and energy and gives them non-hallucinatory, substantiated answers to questions that they can find out with a natural language interface. And I was like, gosh, I know people who would be interested in this. So what did I do? You send it out. You send emails out to the 15 or 20 people who are really immediately obvious, the people who you know for a long time and who immediately come to mind. And then I found myself kind of going, and I would literally come in to the office and I would sit at my keyboard and I go, I know people. I'm just not sure who I need to reach out to. So what would I do next? I'd go out to social media. And then I'd end up looking for, there are people who are posting stuff on LinkedIn or there's stuff on Instagram or, God forbid, Twitter, X, Facebook, right? And then 4 hours later, I'd look up because I was doom scrolling around something and literally not getting any work done. And what I realized was, I was like, wait a minute, Dave, you big doofus. Like you just built this AI-based query engine that you could use to actually have AI help you with these connections and with all these people that you know. And then it hit me like, oh my God, like I've been doing this. I've been building relationships with people for 20 plus years. And these are people who actually know me and who I know. And by the way, I feel really warmly towards. And I thought, oh my God, what if you could use the power of AI to basically be your smart assistant and go back through all of those old emails, all of those old information and pull in the social media stuff, read that information for me, and then help me find out who would be the people who would be interested in something like this. And then on top of it, you could then build campaigns to actually do outreach to just the right people who are writing or talking about just the right things and referring to the historical relationship that we've had over the years. And I started doing it and built the first prototype in about 2 weeks, just on my own email. And I started sending out some stuff to people and they were like, oh my God, Dave, it's been so long. They were like, what are you up to? So I'm telling them, wait a minute, you built this thing that like reads all of the social media and then finds the stuff that's actually relevant and then even learns the tone of the way that I write. So, I could even give it a sample email. So it starts to learn how I write and that it adapts. Again, AI learning, right? And they said, wait, could you build that for me? And you know what? When people start saying those kinds of things, like I've been hanging around this space for long enough to go, okay, maybe there's something real here. Took another 7 months to really build this so that anyone with a Gmail or a Google account, apps for business, and anything like that, in 6 clicks can connect up their email. It literally goes through all of that and builds what we call briefings. They're like little dossiers on every single person you have ever interacted with or who has ever communicated with you. Talks a little bit about your relationship with them, tries to find them on social media if possible, pulls in that information, and then keeps it constantly updated. And then allows you to create campaigns. And by the way, this is super important. It creates email drafts for you. But it's AI. It doesn't really know, is this appropriate, right? There are sometimes people like, whoa, I want to be a little passive aggressive to this person. Maybe I know them, but I don't actually want to send them an email. So instead of actually doing all the sending, what it does is it actually puts it into your email drafts folder with a little explanation. And so in 15 minutes a day, I can go through these pre-made, pre-built, written like me drafts, add, edit, remove, or in some cases, delete.
Yeah.
And then I can send them. And the remarkable thing is that, so we've been in public beta now for a little over a month, and it's been astonishing. Like the response rates are in the 30 to 40%. Yeah, I'm not talking about reads and opens. I'm literally talking about people who respond.
Yeah.
And then they set up meetings. And our ICP, right, the ideal customer profile, is really built around people who are founders or run sales for what they do. They may not even have a CRM system today. Maybe they're doing this all off of old relationships where the lifetime value of a new customer is like $50,000 or more. So think, you're a coach, you're an executive, you're a leader, you're a wealth manager, you're in the real estate business. You're an accountant, like these kinds of people. And it helps to save them all of this time. And what we found was that for the people who would do this for 15 minutes a day, send out 10 emails for 2 weeks, every single one of them so far has seen a 300% or more ROI in terms of the responses that they get back and the deals that are coming in, because these are people who already know you and they already like you. So as opposed to cold email, and by the way, it's not a replacement for cold email. You can still do cold email if that's your choice. But cold emails, you're lucky if you get 0.5% even response rates and maybe a couple percent read opens. Here we're talking about literally orders of magnitude difference, because not only is it personalized, not only is it tuned towards them and towards hitting them at the right time, it's actually people who know you and who you know. And what I love about this is that it really does bring about these warm reconnections with every single person who signs up and they start using it. They all go, oh my God, Bob, I haven't thought about Bob in years. I love Bob. Sally, wow, I wonder what she's up to. And so we handle all of the stuff around email bounces and checking to make sure, like, does the email still exist? Is the company still around, to make sure that you don't ever send things that aren't going to run through. But it's been so encouraging and so rewarding just to see the kinds of warm emotional connections that get restarted with all of our beta users.
Right, because we go through our careers building these connections with people. And when you're interacting with them, you're like, wow, I really like this. We're getting on well. And then, like all of us, life takes over and we get busy and you know them, but you forget. But there are a number of professions. You're founding a startup, but, you're an attorney or what have you. A lot of the value of those people is in the people that they know. And so having, I guess PR is one, right? Having an ability to kind of go, okay, here are people who are experts in this particular area who might be interested in this proposition, or who I can ask this question to, or I want to sell this thing to, is really useful. But it sounds like it also helps me. Hey, I don't have anything. I want to keep these people in my sphere. I don't have any particular, I'm not trying to sell them anything. I just want to keep in touch with them. It sounds like Warmstart, particularly, like, it looks at my email and it looks at my social networks and sees the interactions from them, and then sort of prompts me to kind of go, okay, look, you haven't mailed Dave for a while. He's just started this new company, for example. Here's an email you might want to send him. A little bit more than the sort of, it's someone's birthday and, LinkedIn sends them a little congratulations. Is that right?
That's exactly right. You want to reach people with a really genuine, sincere message. So it's not a spam. It's not saying, oh, hey, I want to sell you something. It's just like saying, hey, Morgan, congratulations on the launch of the new agency. Super cool. Man, it's been so long. You're still living in San Francisco? Sheesh. Let's go have coffee. And all of a sudden, a relationship that, quite frankly, maybe I wouldn't have thought about, just because we're not top of mind with those people. AI now becomes this extension of my brain. It's not a replacement for my brain. It allows humans to be more human. The problem is that, like, we as humans, we can only remember about 120 to 150 people at any given time. So the goal for this is use AI to help relight up these connections and be that extra outboard brain that brings them to mind at the right time when something interesting is going on that is something important that you might want to talk about, or even just reconnect.
Right. So it sounds like it's building, I think you mentioned it builds a profile of each of the people. What am I going to see in the profile?
Yeah. Would you like to see? If with your permission, I can show the briefing that I have on you, on our relationship.
Okay. All right. Let's do it.
Forgive the UX. Okay. They say if you launch and you're not embarrassed by your product, then you've waited too long. So we have not waited too long. But just to give you a really quick idea, right? So here's your name, right? But now it knows you as the CEO of Firebrand Communications, but that's not because it went to LinkedIn and looked you up. That's just because it read through the emails and the socials that you've got, and it did a little summary. Tells me, when we've last talked. Now I'll talk about these yellow boxes here in a second, but it just gives me some of the recent threads, like what we've recently talked about, some of the social media that it's been able to pull up on you. But this is really where it gets interesting. This is the AI built summary of the relationship that we've had recently. Who you are, what our relationship is like, what are some of the things that we've talked about recently. And you can even see here, like, the different interactions that we've had, and it summarizes each of those different threads as well. So again, this is all automatic. What I love is this idea of metadata is the exhaust of the actions that we take, not something that anybody has to click on. So you see, these are AI generated tags that look at the kinds of our relationship. It's a business relationship. You're an executive. You're a founder of a company, right? You're a partner, professional with, So, let's see. What other founders do I know? Look, here's a whole bunch of other people who I know who are founders in the business. And this idea of being able to cross index on tags, right? So I can even say, who do I know that's an investor? and boom, like here's a whole list of people that it has pulled up that are in my network. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about Gary Bowles in a long time, right? And I can now click in and start making those connections as well. And just to end, the core of it is that you can then do campaigns, right? So you can actually build these campaigns to do outreach. And that's really where the fun happens once all of those briefings are in place and constantly updated.
So I might be a founder or I might be a CRO and I'm thinking, okay, here's my proposition. I might even have already a nurture campaign or something. It's going to prompt me here, but I can also just replace that with my own nurture flow or what have you. And it'll help me keep track of all those conversations. And you can overwrite them. Yeah, because look, I might talk to you on the phone and it doesn't know that. And
right.
We might have met in person. It doesn't have any of that. I mean, it might look at my calendar and say, okay, I see you met. But it's within the bounds of what is digital and can be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But every time that we interact with each other in something that it understands, whether it's on social or via email, it will also pull that information in and update the briefing automatically as well. So as you and I exchanged emails, it's updating the briefing. Or if I end up sending one of those drafts and then that person replies, again, it'll pull in all of that information as well and strengthen the relationship between us. So it adapts as we use it.
And just to be clear, can you use this for sort of cold connections, people who I don't know? Obviously, I can find them on Apollo or I can find a list of people. Here are people who I would like to know. I mean, this might be in the future, of course, but can this kind of approach also be used in cold email? Or is this really for leveraging the network that you've currently got?
It's a great question. And of course, whenever you're asking an entrepreneur what can be done, be very careful, right? As long as you're not asking me to violate the speed of light. So I'll say what it does today and what's on the roadmap. It's really an adjunct to that cold email campaigns, or if you're using Sales Navigator, or if you're using Apollo, if you're using a cold outreach tool, this is something that you use right alongside to nurture the relationships that you have that may have just been people you haven't talked to in 6 months or more. So think about all of those people who you have approached or you have done deals or you have sent proposals to. In the future, we'll absolutely be integrating more deeply with those kinds of tools as well as CRM tools so that it'll have interactions with if you've had a sales meeting, if you've sent a proposal, if they've had a customer support interaction, and all of that will get pulled as well.
Right. So it's going to pull in down the line, because it's still early beta, it's going to pull in HubSpot. It's going to maybe pull in the Gong recordings. It's going to pull in the Zendesk tickets and all that stuff. So you get a more holistic view of the relationship there. At the moment, the data sources are your email, whatever email you're using, and the social channels.
And the social
connect,
right.
Which for early stage founders or for people who are like the eagle salesperson, network is, I mean, that's where their network is anyway. So, sure, I have a database, but I'm going to sell to the people that I know.
And the biggest problem also is we all want to put stuff into the CRMs, but like, oh my God, it's just so much extra work. So here we just try to take that work out of it and put it into the communication itself so that the data gets sucked in as the result of you doing your work, not having to go in and actually add things to your CRM.
It's writing the email. So let's just talk a bit about that. Like, okay, so I understand it's kind of built the profile and it said, okay, here are the people who you might be interested in this. You're looking for funding. Here are the investors that you know. And it's going to then write an email for the investors in your way. How does it learn my writing style? Do you combine it with, I guess it's based on some other foundational model, right? But do you combine it with some templates for, like, how does that work?
So there's 3 important pieces to think about, all working in conjunction. So the first is you've given it access to your email, which also, by the way, means you've given it an access to your sent folder. So it does some analysis on what are the kinds of vocabulary that you use. Do you write tersely, or are you more like me? I'm way more loquacious. Okay. And it starts to look at how to emulate the way that you write. So that's number one. Number two, when you actually start a campaign, the way that it builds itself, builds the campaign, is it just asks you, write an email.
Okay.
Write a sample email as if you were writing to an old friend. And so if you write it very tersely, it's going to take that. If you say flowery statements or you use comedy, well, I mean, it's not terribly good at comedy, but it's good at understanding your tone, and it will emulate that when it sends it out. And then the third part is it does adaptive learning. So every time that you edit a draft, delete a draft, send that draft out, it takes that information in as feedback and tunes the way that it writes the next batch of drafts based on how you have changed things. So that first batch will literally be the worst that it ever writes for you. And then it starts to tune. And by the time you've done 3 or 4 batches, the amount of things that I have to change on a daily basis, maybe it's just a line or 2. And it pretty much sounds like me.
Talk to me a bit about privacy, because it's accessing my email. Those are all my connections and the people that I know. Some of my email is confidential. How does that work? And just technically on the back end, is this in some kind, it's presumably in some kind of RAG database, multi-tenant RAG?
Yeah. Let me be super clear. And because privacy has all to do with the business model. We make money by you paying us money. We do not sell your information to anyone else. You are not the product. You are the customer. Let me be very, very clear. So what does that mean? That means that your data is yours. Your email is yours. We will never sell it. We will never advertise off of it. We will never share it. We won't even look at it without your actual explicit permission if there's a technical support problem. And by the way, all of that stuff is in the terms of service and the privacy policy and the acceptable use. But more importantly, it's all built on trust. If you don't trust this, and if we don't keep the security really paramount, we're dead in the water as a business, right? So we can't allow that to happen. The second thing that we do is when we work with both the open source providers, which we can actually completely control for the LLMs, but some of the commercial providers that we work with, we have contractual arrangements with all of them that they can't store any of the data that we send across. All of it has to stay ephemeral. None of it can be used to train their models. And by the way, we can't train our models using your data either. Your data is explicitly yours. It stays yours. Of course, you give us permission to be able to create the briefings and the summaries and store those, but we don't even keep copies of your email. All of that stuff stays on your email provider, and it's only used in transit for those creations of those summaries.
Okay. But it is learning my style. And so it's not keeping the individual emails, but it's sort of vectorizing that information and interpreting my tone, and so that it can recreate that, but it might not actually have the original source training data.
That's exactly right. We work really hard, and we actually had security audits, and Google had a very comprehensive security audit in order to become a partner where they can actually recommend us. But part of this is also recognizing that we don't want to keep any of that sensitive data on any of our servers. We can regenerate it on the fly if we need to. And when you think about it, most people are sending just a few emails, 10 or 20 a day. So we regenerate that on the fly and do the adaptive learning in a way that even if it got stolen, there would be nothing that anyone could do with it. I would never give my stuff to somebody who had anything other than an incredibly airtight contractual agreement with me, which is, why we thought about this right from the start of who is our customer? How do we align very closely with our customer? And this is some of the most sensitive data that they have. We want to make sure that we treat that with the utmost of respect.
I know it's still early days here and you're just in beta. What have you learned so far? I know you've seen some good levels of engagement, but what are you finding in this space when it comes to AI unlocking people's relationships?
It's a great question. The naive conclusion that a lot of people make is this: this is great. I'm going to have an AI companion who's going to do all of this stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, it's like saying, I'm going to have my junior intern make all of my telephone calls for me, send all of my texts for me, and write all of my emails. I'm sorry, that is just a really moronic way of approaching the problem. So the way I like to think about a really good use of AI is right now we're at the place where let's build GPS as opposed to building self-driving cars. So if you want to go and take what we do, like you want to take a different turn, go take a different turn. Like the GPS will recalculate. It'll take you wherever you want to go and still get you there the best possible way. You don't need a paper map. But like, I'm not sure that I want to trust my car yet to drive along the highway on all these different situations and not slam into a fire truck that's parked along the side of the road. So it's about maintaining control, right? You maintain control. Warmstart never sends an email without you explicitly looking at it, editing it, and then sending it. But it is about finding that right person, crafting the right message, and tuning it to sound like you so that the amount of time that you spend is significantly reduced.
It's definitely a challenge keeping up with people. And so anything that can sort of shorten that and make it happen, as you said, there's lots of things we should do for 15 minutes a day. If we can actually make this happen in 15 minutes a day, because that's the challenge with a lot of email. Like you either send the same thing to lots of people and then it's not very customized, or a very customized thing to a very small handful. You don't have much impact. How do you get that middle area where it's enough scale, but customized to actually feel like you? And it sounds like AI can definitely, judiciously used, play a good role in that.
That's exactly right. To borrow from a great old movie, and this just tells you that I'm a Gen Xer. One of our customers who's a wealth manager, when he would get those drafts each morning, he would say, Dave, he'd say, you know what this is? I'd say, what? He said, these are the Glengarry leads.
Yes.
Right? And so I know I've completely separated myself from anyone who hasn't seen the movie. But right, that's the feeling that people get this, oh, yes, of course. I love this person. I haven't talked to them in a while. And now you're giving me in 15 minutes that chance to reconnect with them in a really positive way. And I can still get the rest of my day done.
And I imagine, look, once you sort of build that muscle and you get the habit of going and doing it a little bit, and actually it's fine. Like, it's actually really fun. It reinforces itself. But a lot of people don't do it because there's a sort of mentally, I haven't spoken to this person for 3 years. Like, where do I even start? You know, like, hi, how have you been for the last 3 years? Feels so weird. But once you do it for a few times, you can get into it. And so if AI can help us there, then that's great. Let's just switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about, you're a multiple time founder. I think you said you founded 8 companies, right? So a glutton for punishment here. But tell me a little bit what it's like now founding a company in the AI era. What has changed for you?
Oh my God. Like, I am so excited every day to come down here into my office and get to work. Because look, I'm technical. I'm a nerd. Okay. I code. I do all of this. The ability for artificial intelligence and the kinds of tools as a programmer that are available today to enable a person like me to be able to come up to speed quickly. I sit with a ChatGPT and a Claude window open at all times. And I can say to it, oh, wait, how do I write that in Node.js, right? And boom, I can give it the code snippet and it will immediately respond. And just like having an expert sitting on my shoulder who will give me back really good, valuable feedback, error messages, all of these kinds of things. Now, can it actually do the entire soup to nuts? No, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. No. Are we getting closer? No question. But this is like asking someone who used to be a PDP-11 programmer, what's it like programming with a CRT screen now? Yeah, you don't have to carry around these enormous card punch decks, right? Where if you lose one. So you still need the human creativity. You need the human to be thinking about what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Who am I solving it for? What kind of a data architecture do I need in order to make that work? How will this scale longer term? These kinds of questions, then you can talk with the AI and it'll give you feedback, but it's not going to replace human programmers, not at least anytime soon. 2 or 3 years from now, who knows? But what I do know is this: technology is a tool. It's something that allows us to be able to solve important problems for each other. And in that sense, what really comes down to is who's behind this and what is their intention. And so what I do is I get my best ideas by talking to users, by talking to people who have problems, and then pattern matching. And then I can use AI as a single founder to be able to be 10, 15 times more productive, because what I used to have to do was hire in another employee. And now I can actually have AI do 75% of that work, and maybe I learn the last 25%.
Right. So you're able to get to beta quick without having to hire initially, like, okay, I need to build the beta version. I need a team of 5 people to build this initial product quick enough so that we can seize this opportunity. It sounds like now you're using the AI to help accelerate the development and, fix the bugs that you wouldn't normally have spotted, all those kind of things. So you can actually get there faster without those other 4 people.
That's exactly right. And on top of that, look, this reminds me of cloud computing. When I was running Technorati, we had to go and spend, I had to take venture investment because we had to rack and stack servers.
Just run the servers, right?
Right. And now you can go and get an AWS account or a Google Cloud account and even get free credits for a while and get up and running really, really quickly. I think all of this that I've built, I had a phenomenal designer who I got to work with on a contract basis. And then I did all of the coding. And to be able to do that again as a single founder, it's such a joy, Morgan.
Yeah. What does this mean to funding, though? Typically, an early stage company would need to go out to get angel round to be able to pay those 5 people to build the initial product to kind of get to that product market fit. You don't need that now. I mean, you need 1 person to kind of get that. So what does that mean to the sort of pre-seed and just the way you've raised institutional rounds, a lot of investors? Has your thinking changed there?
Absolutely. Listen, early money is always the most expensive money you're ever going to take. And when I start out a potential business, I don't know if it's going to take off. I don't even really know, is the problem validated yet? So the more that I can build without ever writing a line of code, the more that I can talk to people and validate the problem and even potentially find out, will they pay and how much will they pay? That de-risks things immediately. Adding AI to the mix allows me to now de-risk the development process even further, to the point where we can literally have dozens of public beta users that are running the service without ever having to hire a single employee. And hopefully that means that as they see value and as we then start charging them for that value, it allows us to bootstrap and de-risk the business even further. So at some point, we may choose that we'll raise some money, but it becomes less of money that you have to raise that's purely risk capital. And now it becomes money that you're raising because you've proven the concept, which means higher valuations, which means more ownership. And it also means more value going to the entrepreneur and to the employees and less risk to the institutional investors as well.
How is it changing your sort of thinking about hiring? You have got to this stage on your own, with some help, hey, I'm not a graphics designer. I need someone to do the, help me with the interface or what have you. But as you look forward, how are you thinking about the hiring plan for a company like this?
I believe keeping it as small as possible for as long as possible, Morgan. People say, oh, I have so many people who work for me. Listen, I've had literally hundreds, even thousands of people who ended up reporting to me. It's not as fun as it sounds. There is something that is just so exciting about being able to work with a special operations group, right? Instead of thinking about the army or the police that you would need as companies get bigger, they get slower and more moribund. When you can work with a small cadre of incredibly dedicated people that are empowered to get things done, things move so quickly. AI doesn't solve this problem completely, but even just the fact that we're doing video, the fact that there are people around the world who can be participating in this, that the internet itself has brought about so many of these productivity enhancements, and then no code tools that you can build things without ever having to write a line of code just to prove out the proof of concept. I think these are all incredibly entrepreneur friendly.
I agree with that. And so related to this, we were just sort of in the pre-show here talking a little bit about founder mode and that essay from Paul Graham that has sort of lit a lot of people in Silicon Valley on fire this week. What do you think about the founder mode as a serial founder of businesses?
Oh man, can I show you how many scars, so many mistakes I have made along the way? Both micromanaging and also way stepping back and trust your people, right? So I've made so many of these mistakes, I can't even count anymore. And at its core, the idea of the founder as being a member and a core part of the business is invaluable. Having said that, I also needed to learn what are the things that I'm good at and where am I good at them at what stage in the company. So you have to be able to recognize that I can't lead and manage a team when we're at 1,000 people the same way that I could when we're 8 people. And I can't hold people accountable in the same ways. I'm not going to be able to dive in and in fact, it's incredibly disempowering once you start getting above a team of about 20 or so to be diving in and looking at everybody and second guessing their decisions. So part of this is making good decisions in terms of who I hire and keeping track of what's going on. But it's also about understanding that at some point, the founder's job is partly cultural and is also around maintaining this core set of values of who are we and what do we believe in and what are we going to be building and doing? And then how do we reward and hold accountable the teams and what they do? So a team at 60 or 120, you can't manage them by understanding what everybody is doing. You manage them by building incentive systems that reward certain kinds of behaviors and punish or disincentivize other kinds of behaviors, right? Because it's really about getting them to work together in positive ways and not getting all tribal. Now, that's not something that you do when you're a team of 3. When you're a team of 3, you can all sit down, have a cup of coffee. Let's all talk about this and we get it resolved and it's done. You can turn on a dime. You can't turn on a dime when you're 1,000 people. You need to be thinking about how do I communicate? How do I make it clear how this is going to affect different parts of the business? And what are the side effects that are going to happen here too? So it's a bit of a combination, Morgan. You never want to let go. And as a founder, no matter what your job title is, you will always be the founder. And you're always going to hold that flame if you choose to take that responsibility seriously. And what I found is that then allows those kinds of companies a disproportionate ability to make the kinds of large changes at scale that Paul talks about in his essay in a way that no professional manager can ever really do with confidence. And at the same time, you gotta hire great people and create the incentive systems and the accountability structures to make sure that they are actually achieving the results that the business needs. And if not, that they're out of the organization and you've moved on.
Yeah, There definitely is a different sort of skill set from 0 to 1 or 0 to 10, 20 people than there is when you get over 100. You need to manage in a different style. And some founders can absolutely scale that. There are some good examples. And others, they're not able to adjust. And actually, I found, personally speaking, I like working in smaller companies where you can make things happen more quickly and you can get across it and you can be involved. And as you get to several hundred people, with the more bureaucratization of a business that is necessary at that scale, I enjoyed it less. It just wasn't my style of management. And that's okay, but you have to recognize that within yourself. And some people can do both. But I find that many founders, earlier entrepreneurs at the beginning, they don't make a big transition to multiple hundred people and the sort of structures that are involved to that, because that's just not their skill set. But as a founder, it's always your baby because you conceived it originally. And so, yeah, there is a place for that. You are a serial entrepreneur, as we talked about. And when you thought about building this company, what are you thinking about doing differently this time than you did before? I'm not talking about, okay, now we can use the cloud because that's much cheaper than racking and stacking servers, and we can use AI so I can actually get to a beta quicker. Like, what are the things that you're going to do differently this time that you've learned from before?
My friend Esther Dyson loves to say, always make new mistakes.
Yes.
I love that adage because we're never going to do it perfectly. There is no perfect. Perfect really is the enemy of the good here. So I look at this as an opportunity to move forward, trust my instincts, pick great people, give them the authority to get things done while also being available to mentor them and to steward the company as opposed to manage the company. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that people don't like to be managed. But you know what? We all love to be led. We all love the vision of a great leader. And by the way, that's hubris for me to even make that approximation of a statement, but that's my aspiration, right? The aspiration is to be a leader that people want to look towards and that they get inspiration from, and then to create the structures so that the results are what gets managed, not the people. And the second part of this is then people sign up to this, right? And we co-design what needs to get done. My job happens to be help them understand the why of what needs to happen and the where we're going, the vision of it. But to co-create with them the what and then give them the authority to pick the when and the how much. And when we do that, then it becomes really clear there's a give and take. And there's a sense of ownership. And the other thing that I'll add here, Morgan, is that I really learned a ton from Eric Ries's sets of books around lean startup. It's so easy to make the mistake of thinking that you know what the customer wants. And if there's one thing I'm really doing differently this time around, it's constantly checking in and checking on what are the customers actually doing, not what are they saying. Because you know what? People will lie in the nicest of ways. And they'll say, that's nice, that's interesting. But will you pay for it? Where's the pain here? Where's the real need? And holding that passionately where you can believe in what you're doing, but also always be verifying that with actual real customers in the field and making sure that I'm actually aligned with what they're doing and we're either meeting an important need or solving an important problem for them and not getting lost in the exhaust that we generate ourselves. If there's one thing that I'm really working hard to do differently this time around, it's just being obsessed with our customers.
That's a great advice, because I could easily imagine, hey, we're going to put a lot of effort into really training how the AI can write the really custom emails for people, because wouldn't that be great if it could do it? but you might look at what people are actually doing and it gets close. But what they always do is just delete that one and go, okay, I got to email Bob. Here's what I want to say to Bob. Hey, Bob, I haven't spoken to you for a while. I want to play golf. Yeah. And that's it. And the AI is never going to come up with that based on the history of it. So it would be not worth putting your investment in that particular feature because it's not good enough to kind of get to that point. I'm not saying that's the case.
No.
Like, there's
exactly
an example.
Right. And the nerd in me wants to build the cool thing because it's so cool. But if it's not actually what people want, or even more importantly, if it's not what people value, leave it alone. Let it go. Focus on what people actually value, which means actually getting out of the office and talking to people and listening to them.
One great piece of advice here is look at what people are actually doing with your product and then build that. And whether you're marketing to those people or whether you're building the product, that's super important. And just as we close out here, what other recommendations do you have for others at this early stage startups?
Number one, don't be scared. This is a terrifying business, especially when just starting out for the first time. And the imposter syndrome is really, really common. And the truth is that you are the person that is building this and you are capable of doing it. And everybody goes through those challenges. Listen carefully, ask for feedback, but trust your gut. People really do want to hear from you and they really do want what you're building. Second is you don't need to listen to 100 people to understand what needs to get done. There's a great rule of thumb from ethnographic research that I'll set up 15 interviews with people. If I am not hearing from at least 6 or 8 of those people about the same problem or need, assuming that they're all in the same kind of psychographic or demographic, from 15 interviews, I'm probably on the wrong track. And instead, I'll ask myself, wait, what were the 6 or 8 things that I'm hearing over and over again in terms of their expressing a need or a problem? And then I'll pivot. And by the way, I'll usually know by 6 or 8 of these people, like, oh, I'm onto something. And that I'll tell you, that's 3 to 4 hours, half an hour with 6 to 8 people. 3 to 4 hours to figure out if what I'm building is actually something that people will want. And not only that they'll want it, but they'll pay for it. These are the key questions that I would recommend that a new entrepreneur do. And guess what? It's scary. It's scary to talk to people and ask them how much they will pay for something, or will they pay for it, or why will they pay for it, or why won't they pay for it? But those are the key questions to ask.
Yeah, it's scary because you could be wrong. But what's scarier is you could build it and still be wrong. And, you've spent the time and you're down the line on this in the wrong direction. So,
oh, Morgan, like that's a $500 million scar right there, man.
Right. Okay. I love that. But I do love that advice. Like, work out where you can build something that people want and that they value. And if you can put a number on it, brilliant.
Or even better, if they're willing to pay ahead of time, chef's kiss, you've nailed it.
So Dave Sifry is the founder of Warmstart, which, as we've seen, how it uses AI to help people build their connections. Dave, thanks for your time today. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Yeah, so Warmstart's over at warmstart.ai. And you can reach me, you can email me at dsifry, DSIFRY, at warmstart.ai. And I'd love to hear from you.
Dave, thanks so much for your time and sharing some of the details about Warmstart and your experience today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
So great to catch up, Morgan. Such a pleasure.
Talk to you next time.